In the 2nd century, in the hills of southern India, a young monk named Nagarjuna sat before his teacher and asked a question that should have gotten him thrown out of the monastery. What if everything the Buddha taught about reality is still, in some way, a trap? His teacher did not scold him. Instead, he grew quiet, the way a man grows quiet when a student has stumbled onto something true before he was ready for it. Nagarjuna had noticed a contradiction nobody wanted to name. The teachings said all things arise from causes, that nothing exists on its own, and yet monks still argued fiercely about which doctrines were absolutely, permanently correct. If nothing has a fixed essence, Nagarjuna asked, how can even our idea of no fixed essence be fixed? He had found a crack in the floor of his own tradition. Most people, sensing a crack like that, back away from it. Nagarjuna knelt down and began to pry it open. The legend that grew around Nagarjuna says he did not find his answer in books. It says the deepest version of the teaching, the Prajnaparamita, the perfection of wisdom, had been given by the Buddha centuries earlier, then judged too dangerous for the world. Humanity, the story goes, was not ready to hear that even its most sacred certainties were empty of fixed essence. So the teaching was entrusted to the Nagas, serpent spirits who guarded it in an underwater palace beneath the sea, waiting for someone wise enough and reckless enough to come and ask for it back. Whether or not you take the myth literally, its shape tells you something true about Nagarjuna's actual life. He went looking for a truth that his own culture had decided was too destabilizing to keep in general circulation. Sacred things get buried not because they are false, but because they are dangerous to those who love their certainties. Picture the scene the old texts describe, Nagarjuna descending beneath the waves, not drowning, moving through water as though it were simply another room. He reaches the palace of the Naga king and asks plainly for the hidden scriptures. The king does not refuse him outright. He tests him first, because the danger in this teaching is real. Emptiness, shunyata, is not a comforting idea. It says that nothing you cling to, not your name, your nation, your religion, your sense of self, has a fixed, independent, permanent essence. Everything exists only in relation to everything else, arising from causes, dissolving into effects. Told carelessly, this teaching can curdle into despair. If nothing is truly real, why bother with anything? The Naga king wanted to know whether this young monk understood the difference between emptiness as liberation and emptiness as nihilism, because one sets you free and the other destroys you. Here is the twist almost no one expects. Nagarjuna's answer was not mystical at all. It was almost mathematical. He said that a chariot is not identical to its wheels, its axle, its frame, or any single part, yet it is not separate from them either. The chariot exists, functions, carries people, but if you search for some essential chariotness independent of its parts and their arrangement, you will search forever and find nothing. This is not a reason to stop riding chariots. It is a reason to stop mistaking the label for the thing. Emptiness, Nagarjuna insisted, does not mean things don't exist. It means things exist dependently, relationally, without needing some hidden permanent core to be real. The Naga king, hearing this, understood the young monk had grasped the teaching's true center, not its dangerous edge. He handed over the scriptures. Nagarjuna surfaced from the sea carrying an idea that would reshape philosophy across an entire continent. When Nagarjuna returned to land, he did not simply publish a new set of beliefs. He developed something almost surgical, a method for dismantling every fixed position, including his own. He would take any claim. The self exists, the self does not exist, the world has a beginning, the world has no beginning, and show that each one followed to its logical end, collapsed into contradiction. This was not cleverness for its own sake. It was medicine. He compared his own philosophy to a purgative, a remedy that must eventually pass out of the system along with the illness it was treating. If you cling to emptiness itself as a fixed truth, he warned, you have simply built a new prison out of the tool meant to free you from the old one. This single line stopped generations of monks in their tracks, because it meant even Buddhism could not be treated as a final, untouchable certainty. It is worth pausing on how radical this actually was inside his own world. Religious founders rarely build in their own obsolescence, but Nagarjuna's logic did exactly that. If all things are empty of fixed essence, then his own teaching about emptiness must also be empty of fixed essence. It could not be clung to as the final word. It was a raft for crossing a river, not a shrine to be worshipped on the far bank. Some of his fellow monks found this terrifying. If nothing, not even the Buddha's teaching, can be grasped as absolute truth, what is left to stand on? Nagarjuna's answer was quietly devastating. You stand on the ground itself moving under your feet, and you learn to walk anyway. Certainty was never the solid thing people imagined it to be. It was a story people told themselves to stop feeling the ground move. Consider how this plays out far from any monastery, in an ordinary human argument. Two people fight bitterly over religion, or politics, or which parent was right 40 years ago. Each is convinced they are defending a fixed, essential truth. Nagarjuna would ask a quieter question. What if the thing you are defending was never a solid object to begin with, only a pattern held together by causes, memories, and conditions that could have gone differently? This does not mean nothing matters. The chariot still carries you somewhere. It means the fight over what the chariot essentially is may be missing the point entirely. Nagarjuna was not teaching people to stop caring. He was teaching them to stop suffocating on their own certainty, to hold their positions the way you hold water in cupped hands. Firmly enough to use it, loosely enough not to crush it. There is a story, likely embellished over centuries, that in his old age Nagarjuna was asked by a king to explain why, after decades of dismantling every fixed idea in existence, he still bothered to teach, to write, to argue at all. If nothing has a fixed essence, why act as though your words matter? Nagarjuna is said to have smiled and answered that precisely because nothing has a fixed essence, everything is workable. A rigid world could never change. A world made of dependent, shifting relations is a world where suffering can actually be undone, where a bad habit can be broken, where a broken relationship can heal, because nothing about it was ever carved in permanent stone to begin with. Emptiness in his hands stopped being a void to fear and became the very reason hope was rational at all. His death, like his life, became legend rather than simple record. One story claims Nagarjuna, having outlived his usefulness to certain jealous rivals at court, calmly told them that his life, too, was a matter of dependent conditions, and that if they wished it to end, they need only provide the right cause. Whether this tale is history or parable, its message fits everything he taught. He treated even his own mortality without the desperate grasping most of us reserve for our most precious fixed idea, the idea of a permanent self that must never end. He is remembered not clinging even to his own continued existence as some essential, non-negotiable truth. It is a strange kind of freedom, one most people spend their whole lives refusing to consider, because it feels, at first glance, like losing everything. What makes Nagarjuna dangerous and useful today has almost nothing to do with ancient metaphysics and everything to do with how tightly modern people grip their identities. We build entire personalities out of labels, our politics, our job title, our nationality, our wounds, our diagnoses, our old grudges. Nagarjuna's insight suggests that none of these labels are the solid core they pretend to be. They are patterns, held together by causes and conditions, capable of shifting the moment conditions shift. This is not an argument for having no values. The chariot still needs wheels. It is an argument against mistaking the label for something eternal, against defending an identity as though its destruction would be the destruction of you. The people who suffer most, Nagarjuna implies, are not those with the weakest beliefs, but those who have forgotten their beliefs were always relational, always dependent, always capable of being held more lightly. There is a reason his method took the form of dismantling arguments rather than delivering commandments. A commandment can be obeyed or disobeyed, but it still leaves the underlying grasping mind intact, still hunting for the next fixed thing to hold onto. Nagarjuna wanted to loosen the hand itself. He would take whichever side of a debate you defended and show you, patiently, where it broke down, then take the opposite side and show you where that broke down too. Not to leave you in despair, but to show you that reality does not owe you a single, tidy, permanent answer to hold in your fist. The discomfort of that realization, he believed, was the beginning of actual freedom, not its opposite. Most people mistake the discomfort for the danger. Nagarjuna thought the discomfort was the doorway. Nagarjuna's influence did not stay confined to a single school. His logic traveled through Tibet, through China, through Japan, shaping how entire civilizations thought about the self, about attachment, about the difference between having convictions and being imprisoned by them. Yet almost none of this reaches ordinary conversation today, because his central insight is uncomfortable in exactly the way modern life avoids discomfort. We prefer teachers who hand us a fixed answer, a final identity, a permanent label to defend online and in arguments at dinner tables. Nagarjuna offers something harder and, in the long run, kinder, the invitation to notice how much of your suffering comes not from the world itself, but from your grip on how the world must permanently be, and how you must permanently be within it. So here is where the ocean myth becomes useful outside of myth. Somewhere in your life right now, there is a belief you are gripping as though letting it move an inch would mean losing yourself entirely. An opinion about who you are, who wronged you, what you deserve, what can never change. Nagarjuna is not asking you to abandon it. He is asking you to notice that it is a chariot, not a single fixed essence, made of parts, conditions, and causes that could, under different circumstances, have arranged themselves differently. Today, pick one belief you defend the hardest and ask honestly what conditions produced it, and whether those conditions are still true. You do not have to demolish the belief. You only have to loosen your grip enough to feel that it was never as solid as your fear told you it was. That loosening, Nagarjuna would say, is where the actual freedom begins.